Hey, wanted to share one more thought from Philippians chapter 4 with you, but first a quick story. When I was 19, a couple of friends and I went skydiving. We went down to the Ohio River, did a little bit of training, and then got a chance to jump. Here's a picture of us on that day. You might recognize the other two guys, Doug Rapp, who graduated with me, and then Scott Howard. It was an incredible experience. I still remember that day after several hours of training, and then we had some lunch, and that afternoon we crawled into a Cessna that wasn't really built for jumping out of. It had just had the seats removed except for the pilot, and we kind of all crawled in there and off up into the sky we went. We were using a method called static line, where your parachute is actually hooked to the plane, so when you got a certain distance away, it opened up your chute for you. And so when it was our turn to go, they opened the door to the side of the plane and had you crawl out onto the little tiny step there and then reach out for the metal strut that was holding up the wing. And you got to hang there for a few seconds until your jump master gave you the thumbs up and it was your time to go. Here's a picture of Scott climbing out for his turn. And so we kind of had to hang there and just look at at all the land below us until our jump master gave us the thumbs up. And basically at that point we just had to release our hands and fall backwards. I still remember when he gave me the thumbs up and I let go. The next thing I remember was the rope pulling my chute open, and then I got to just enjoy the ride down. Like I said, it was an incredible experience. I'm so glad I did it. It was a lot of fun, and I share that with you because at the time, I saw that as a 19-year-old kid, I saw that as a direct application of Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You see, as a 19-year-old young man, I had this idea that verse meant there was nothing too extreme, there was no accomplishment, there was no task, there was no adventure that I should be afraid of because I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. It turns out that was kind of a wrong interpretation of that particular verse. If you look at it in context, in Philippians 4, Paul is not talking about extreme sports or exciting adventures necessarily. He says this just a couple verses earlier in 11. Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I've learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through Him who strengthens me. It's interesting when you look at that particular verse in context, it isn't about an extreme situation. It's about a very humble one, about a very difficult one. Paul was going around on a missionary experience and was basically learning how to be satisfied, how to be strengthened in Christ, no matter what was happening. I'm going to be honest with you. This week has been kind of tough, kind of challenging. Nothing bad has happened or anything like that. But like many of you, I'm kind of sick of this quarantine, this social distancing. It's just a very difficult circumstance for me and for my family. I love them being around, but at the same time, there's a reason you see all of these videos being shot at the church. It's nice to get away. It's getting kind of tense in my household. Also, I think it was Tuesday. I was very chippy, and I'm just sick of this situation that we're in. And I know a lot of you are lonely right now. Would love to have some noise in the house, and that's part of your situation. There's others of you that you're not working less right now. You're actually working more. Those of you in the healthcare field or many other fields, you're probably even busier right now, and that makes your situation difficult. This is what I want us to see from this particular verse, that I can do all things through Him who strengthens me, means I can get through this situation by relying on Christ. It's not what great adventure can I go do, but how can I get through this challenging circumstance as a result of who Christ is and what He has done for me. And so no matter what it is that you're going through right now, keep that verse in mind. I can do all things through him, Christ, who strengthens me. In fact, that I think is a nice wrap-up verse from these few devotions that I've shared from Philippians 4. If I go back and I start back in verse 6, let me read the rest of that through what we talked about today, and you'll see how this fits. Verse 6 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. Not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me." So here's the point today. I hope you're finding your strength and your hope and your peace in Christ, and not your own ability or not your desire to go do extreme adventures. This verse that we know by heart is clearly about being in humble, difficult situations, kind of like the one we're in. And so if I go back to the example of skydiving that I shared with you, a better illustration might be the amount of faith that we put into some people and some things that weren't God. To just be able to let go and to rest in him is what I think we're being asked to do. And so I pray that even in this difficult situation, whether you're lonely or you're working more than you ever have before, that you be relying on Christ for strength to get through this, because you can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. We're praying for you, and I hope that God is blessing you and your family until I see you again. God bless.